Vandenberg Space Launch Complex 4, SLC-4. Space Launch Complex 4, SLC-4, is a launch and landing site at Vandenberg Space Force Base, VSFB, California, United States. It has two pads, both of which are used by Space Exploration Technologies Corp, more commonly known as SpaceX, for Falcon 9 Block 5 launch vehicle, one pad for launch operations, and the other as Landing Zone 4, LZ-4, for SpaceX landings. Vandenberg Space Force Base, VSFB, the International Air Transport Association, IATA, Airport Code, VBG, the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, Airport Code, KVBG, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, Location Identifier, VBG, previously Vandenberg Air Force Base, VAFB, is a United States Space Force base in Santa Barbara County, California. Established in 1941, Vandenberg Space Force Base is a space launch base, launching spacecraft from the Western Range, WR, and also performs missile testing. The United States Space Forces, USSF's, Space Launch Delta 30, SLD-30, serves as the host delta for the base, equivalent to the United States Air Force, USAF, Air Base Wing. In addition to its military space launch mission, Vandenberg Space Force Base also hosts space launches for various civil and commercial space entities, such as the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, and SpaceX Company. The complex was previously used by Atlas and Titan expendable launch vehicles between 1963 and 2005. It consisted of two launch pads, Space Launch Complex 4 West, SLC-4W, formerly Point Arguello Launch Complex 2-3, PLC-2-3, and Space Launch Complex 4 East, SLC-4E, formerly Point Arguello Launch Complex 2-4, PLC-2-4. Both pads were built for use by Atlas Agena expendable launch system, but were later rebuilt to handle Titan launch vehicles. The designation SLC-4 was applied at the time of the conversion to launch Titan rockets. Both pads at Space Launch Complex 4 are currently leased by SpaceX. SLC-4E is leased as a launch site for the Falcon 9 rocket, which first flew from Vandenberg on September 29, 2013, following a 24-month refurbishment program which had started in early 2011. SpaceX began a 5-year lease of Launch Complex 4 West in February 2015 in order to use that area as a landing pad to bring back vertical takeoff, vertical landing, VTVL, return to launch site, RTLS, first stage boosters of the reusable Falcon 9 launch vehicle. That pad was later named by SpaceX as Landing Zone 4 and first used operationally for a Falcon 9 Block 5 booster, tail number 1048-2, landing on October 8, 2018. The first launch from Point Arguello Launch Complex 2-4, PLC-2-4, occurred on August 14, 1964, when a KH-7 satellite was launched by an Atlas Agena D expendable launch system. After 27 Atlas Agena launches, the last of which was on June 4, 1967, the complex was deactivated. During 1971 the complex was reactivated and refurbished for use by the Martin Marietta Titan III launch vehicles. The Titan 3D, essentially a Titan 3C with the transstage removed, it was designed for heavy low Earth orbit, LEO, payloads, made its maiden flight from SLC-4E on June 15, 1971, launching the first KH-9 hexagon satellite. The first KH-11 Kennen satellite was launched from the complex on December 19, 1976. All 22 Titan 3D were launched from SLC-4E, with the last occurring on November 17, 1982. The complex was then refurbished to accommodate the Martin Marietta Titan 34D, featured Stage 1 and Stage 2 stretched with more powerful UA-1206 solid motors. 7 Titan 34D were launched between June 20, 1983, and November 6, 1988. SLC-4E hosted one of the most dramatic launch accidents in United States history when a Titan 34D-9 rocket carrying a KH-9 photo-reconnaissance satellite exploded a few hundred feet above the pad on April 18, 1986. The enormous blast showered the launch complex with debris and toxic propellant, hydrazine and dinitrogen tetroxide, resulting in extensive damage. 16 months after the accident, the pad was back in commission when it hosted a successful launch of a KH-11 satellite. The last Titan variant to use the complex was the Titan IV heavy-lift launch vehicle, starting on March 8, 1991, with the launch of Lacrosse 2. On October 19, 2005, the last flight of a Titan rocket occurred, when a Titan IVB variant was launched from SLC-4E, with an improved Crystal satellite. Following this launch, the complex was deactivated, having been used for 68 launches. SpaceX refurbished SLC-4E for Falcon 9 launches in a 24-month process that began in early 2011. The draft environmental impact assessment with a finding of no significant impact was published in February 2011. Demolition began on the pad's fixed and mobile service towers in summer 2011. By late 2012, SpaceX anticipated that the initial launch from the Vandenberg pad would be in 2013, with the larger variant Falcon 9 version 1.1. As the pad was nearing completion in February 2013, the first launch was scheduled for summer 2013, but was delayed until September 2013. SLC-4W started operations in 1963 as Space Launch Complex 4 West, and continued as an operational launch site through 2003. In 2015, SpaceX started conversion of the launch site into Landing Zone 4, LZ-4. Landing operations commenced in 2018 at LZ-4. The first launch to use what is now SLC-4 occurred on July 12, 1963, when an Atlas LV-3A Gennady launched the first KH-7 Gambit reconnaissance satellite, from Point Arguello Launch Complex 2-3, PLC-2-3. 12 Atlas Agenas launches were conducted from PLC-2-3, with the last occurring on March 12, 1965. Following this, it was rebuilt as SLC-4W, a Titan launch complex. The first Titan launch from SLC-4W was a Titan 3B, Titan III, modified by the addition of an Agena upper stage, on July 29, 1966. All 68 Titan 3B launches occurred from SLC-4W, with the last on February 12, 1987. After the retirement of the Titan 3B, it became a Titan 23G, or Titan II Space Launch Vehicle, SLV, launch site, and 12 Titan II launches, using the 23G orbital configuration, medium-lift launch vehicle derived from the LGM-25C Titan II Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, ICBM, were conducted between September 5, 1988 and October 18, 2003. Following the retirement of the Titan 23G, SLC-4W was deactivated. 93 rockets were launched from SLC-4W. SLC-4W was the site of the launch of Clementine, the only spacecraft to be launched from Vandenberg to the Moon, which was launched by a Titan 23G on January 25, 1994. SpaceX signed a 5-year lease of Launch Complex 4 West in February 2015, in order to use the area to land reusable launch vehicles at the pad. The location is being used for vertical landing of return-to-launch site, RTLS, first-stage boosters of the Falcon 9 rockets that are launched from the adjacent SLC-4E launch pad. This novel use of SLC-4W had initially surfaced in July 2014 when NASA Spaceflight.com published that SpaceX was considering leasing SLC-4W for use as a RTLS vertical landing facility for reusable first-stage boosters. Principal structures on the pad were demolished in September 2014 as construction of the landing pad began and was completed sometime around 2017. After performing return-to-launch site landings at its 2 Cape Canaveral Space Force Station landing pads, landing zones 1 and 2, the company initially planned to attempt the first West Coast booster landing at Vandenberg Air Force Base with the 4th Iridium NEXT satellite launch in December 2017, but ultimately opted for an expendable mission. In July 2018, SpaceX filed the United States Federal Communications Commission, FCC, permit to communicate with a Falcon 9 Block 5 first-stage post-landing at SLC-4W, hinting at a potential RTLS landing, for the SAOCOM-1A mission. This launch was later rescheduled to October 8, 2018. Publicly announced through FCC permits and sonic boom warnings, SpaceX renamed Space Launch Complex 4 West as Landing Zone 4 ahead of the first landing attempt. The landing of a Falcon 9 Block 5 first stage B-1048-2 booster successfully occurred at Landing Zone 4 on October 8, 2018, following the launch of the Argentinian SATCOM-1A satellite, Spanish,
Satélite argentino de observación con microondas.
Literal translation, Argentine Microwaves Observation Satellite.